Hey guys and girls, Emma again, and welcome back to the spare room, and welcome back to this little traction engine build on Patreon. Next part of this build really is to make a spacer that goes between this face, which we've already machined, and this face. Now it wants to fit in there fairly snugly, and it probably wants to be just a fraction tight so that it all kicks back when you screw it tight and the screw up, and holds all this together nicely and stops this moving here like this. So best way probably is just to measure off here like this, and rounding up rather than rounding down, I make that 67mm, so that's plenty good enough. I do have this brass tube which is really nice. A local friend here found it for me. However, it's too big to go in on the tube, and it's too thick a wall to go in the hole we've machined. Now I could machine that out, and it needs quite a bit out of it. And I could bore the middle of the tube, or I could split it and move it and then machine more out of it. Because we've already done this and I've worked this out for the tin that we had, what I'm going to do is what the book says, and roll up a piece of tube or a piece of sheet around there, just bend it around, and wire it and silver solder it, and hopefully it'll fit this and it'll fit this. There is, however, some maths involved. This needs to be 67mm long. If you want to convert that, in old language, is about 2 5/8, something like that, a fraction more. And it's got to be the diameter to go around this tube, which is 42mm. The tube's 42. 42 times 3.14, which is pi. It was 131.8, 132mm. If we have a look at this, a picture of what it looks like here. It says 136 by 75, which is a fraction bigger than what I'd like, and a fraction longer too. So it's probably just as well to check it. I'm going to make it to this dimension. A fraction longer wouldn't hurt it. It means that I'd have to make a longer nut. It's about another 7mm. We might keep it nice and short, and if we've got to adjust our canopy to match, that's probably all we do need to adjust. A smart thing to do will be to check the engine frame and just make sure that that'll fit in there. And that's 58mm from the centre of these holes. 58 to the end of the engine. I think there's probably plenty of room there. So at this point we're going to make it 67 by 132. If we dig around under the bench and find a piece of brass, this is pretty rough, but it will clean up fairly nice. This is quite thin, and we can cut this with the tin snips. Looks to be about 0.5 or 0.6mm. I've got quite a bit of that, so let's mark a piece out and cut him out, soften him up, and bend him around a piece of tube, and just see how it's going to look. First job really is to cut a nice piece off the edge so we've got a nice square edge to work with. And we don't really want to cut the piece that's 132 by 67 out of this side because you get a bit of waste here. So we cut it out of this way, mark this off here 67 millimeters and scribe a line, cut him right through and then cut the end off rather than just go to here and then into there, because you've got this ugly bit you're not going to use. If you've got a piece this strip, you will use it for something if you put it in the scrap bin, but it won't be all bent up ugly. If we mark that off, like so. If we're using straight snips we can just go through there, but it's going to be fairly hard going and your hand's going to get in the way. I'm using aircraft snips. What you get is this piece that looks like this when you're done. So the secret will be on this piece to scribe it right through and then to cut this piece from this side, and then we should get a nice neat even piece on this side of the snips. So that's the idea. And then we've got this piece of tin. It's got a bit of a curl in it and a block of wood. Soon flatten that out. We can put this piece back in the scrap bin because that's left over. And this needs a good clean up now, so that's the next job, is just to give this a pretty serious Scotch-Brite. So we've got a nice, clean, reasonably flat piece of brass that we're going to use for this. And I've still got a piece of tube that I can roll this up around. These jaws have got grooves that run all the way through, so that makes it nice and easy to get everything lined up. Of course, if you've got a set of sheet metal rollers, and I'd love a set but I haven't yet, they might be the best way to do this. But I'm not going to rush out. This week and buy a set, and besides that I really haven't got time, room or space to put them. We're getting close to being the right diameter and the right width. This of course was annealed, so it's reasonably soft still. And the two pieces line up and they're nice and parallel, so we're sort of winning. This of course is going to be a fraction long. Very close to going in there, but we've still got this piece here. The secret to it will be to get just a little bit of a flat on the ends nicely along there like that. And just gently work it till it fits all the way around the tube. It's going to take a little bit. And when it's touching there and there's still a gap under here, we might have to file a bit off the end. Best way to do that, flat file in the vise like that. We just push that over it and give it a rub. Probably not going to take long to get that down to size, so check it. That's getting lots and lots closer. It still wants a little bit more. When we've got that so that it'll fit around there with just the tiniest gap down there, I'm going to run some tie wire around it. Just some soft wire. Anything you've sort of got. Don't cut it with your chin snips. That's a really bad thing to do. Just tie this up like this with a pair of pliers. Cut the ugly bits off so you don't stick yourself. And very easy to break this soft wire. So just do it up until it touches all the way around there that you can see. Make sure that's nice and parallel on the end. And we'll cut another bit for the other end and do the same thing. And that's touching there nicely. I'm really pleased with that. I'm just going to get a brass hammer and tap that down so that it's nice and flush both ends. Like that. If we slide him off the brass tube, we've got the piece ready to solder up. So, pretty pleased about that. So there we are, ready to go. That's all nice and clean. I'm going to flux this line all the way along here. And to be honest, if we solder this wire on, we can file it off afterwards. It's not a big deal. It won't take much, but I don't think we will. I'm just going to run a little bit of flux along that line, probably on the inside. Same deal again, silver solder flux and 45%. and I'm just going to run a little bit of solder, just tack at both ends, then run a bit of solder down it, and we think we're probably nearly done. That's about all it's going to need. Back in the pickle. Silver soldering gear away. And that's what we've got. We did manage to solder this on here. But apart from that, we've got a good seam through there. It looks really good. If we tap back that back through there, that's going to stretch that out nice and round and ready to go. We can file these off while it's on the tube and slide him off again. If you've got a wire wheel or a Scotch-Brite wheel, either in the lathe if you cover everything up, or on a bench grinder, when this is all filed up and ready to go, we can polish the brass up again and end up with a really nice piece. So let's get in and do that. So for the main part, I've just put this on the vise and put a bit of wet and dry over it and give it a good polish up all round, and that's come up all right. If it's a bit tight coming back off the tube, then a little bit of a tap with a flat block of wood will soon loosen that up. In this case, it really didn't need it. And that's what we've got, nice round piece of tube. Pretty happy with that. We've still got a little bit of a seam in there, and it might be smart just to get a little piece of emery tape and clean that out. You can feel it but you can't see it. And that's a really nice fit on that copper tube. This could do with a polish. Sit down while you're watching YouTube and a bit of steel wool. Or a bit of Scotch-Brite for a start. Some fine wet and dry, just to get all the scratches and imperfections out of it. And they're starting to look pretty good. You can't see that seam. It's a good idea to position this on the bottom, because when this starts to corrode a bit, you will see the seam. You can't see it at the moment because everything's polished. But when it gets a bit of a patina, you probably will see it, depending on the solder you've used, etc, etc, etc. So it's not a bad idea to put that on the bottom. When we're done, we should have a piece that fits nicely on there, like that. Pretty happy about that. And a piece that fits nicely on there. Pretty happy about that too. Last job is we're going to position this seam at the bottom. And probably the easiest way to do that is just to line that up by eye. Just across there in line with the pipe. And put a Sharpie mark on here. You need to carefully mark this back far enough so that this will fit nicely around the pipe. And the best way to centre punch that is to put a piece of round bar in the vise and just give it a tap and carefully drill it. If you've got to open it up 2 or 3 times with a little drill, that's a good idea. But it just needs to be drilled big enough for this pipe. And in this case, this is a 4mm pipe. You might have 3mm or 3.2 or whatever. I'm going to drill this 4.5 and then just carefully cut the pieces out there. Now I've carefully drilled that out to a clearance hole on the pipe. That pipe just wants to fit in there nicely. And if your drill's not cutting real well, or you're not holding onto it tight enough, which you're going to need to hold onto this pretty tight, and it grabs, just put it over your scrap bit of tube again. Give it a tap with a soft hammer, and if it's a bit tight on your tube, do the same. Give it a tap. Job's fixed. Clean the burr out of the inside too, don't forget that. It's a very quick job just to trim this up. Carefully each side of the hole. If it doesn't quite fit there, I'm going to clean that out with a little file. This is all cosmetic work, or bits that you can see, I mean by that. So take your time, rat tail file, nice and firm on the bench. A file I use a lot is a pair of chainsaw files. I've got a 1/4 inch one, and I think this one's probably 532, something like that. These are Nicholson. They're cheap. You can buy these at the Big Rock hardware store. It's a chainsaw sharpening file. They're really quite cheap, and they're parallel all the way up. For this sort of work, they're excellent. When we've got that nice, we can put that on there. Just like that. It's a fairly nice fit there. That goes on there nicely now. That goes in there. And covers up all that bits. So let's put it together and see how it fits. This is what the firebox looks like from the back with the lid off it. It's got this cutout here for the boiler, and we need to put this through this way up, turn it round so it goes through that hole, probably need to put that on there next. And put this screw in here. Make sure that that's nice and parallel with the pipe, if the pipe's still straight. It looks like we probably only need 3 washers on there rather than 4. This goes over there like that and clips over there. Nut can go on there. We can tighten this one down a little bit. And put the front axle back together. And that's that done. Pretty happy about that. Starting to look like a real steam engine. Something to check is to make sure that this is all nice and straight. And there we go. The reality is that you're going to spend more time fitting these bits together and taking them apart and putting them together and making them all fit together than you are actually making them. But that's the brass boiler barrel in place. We still need to drill another hole in here for the exhaust pipe, so that the exhaust goes up the chimney. That's not something we're really going to do until we've got it all together and we can mark it, get it at the right height. So it's not a good idea to paint this yet. Of course you can go ahead and paint the wheels, but they're going to come off and on a few times, so not really the time to do that. Next part of the project really is the safety valve, so we might get in and do that before I go away to America. That might happen. You're probably going to get that video post it up sometime when I'm across the water. But that's how it's looking, and it's a pretty sweet little engine. Really impressed with that. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to try and get this as short as I can without cutting too many important details out. And be kind to each other. If you're watching this on Patreon, huge thanks and a big shout out. Don't forget to make sure that you've completed the poll to see what colour we should paint this. That's important. And more soon, guys and girls.